So, good morning and welcome to Bytug Little Sig 2021. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Bycroft and I'm a Senior Vice President with Comforte. Many of you may well be familiar with what I am about to present. I have talked about data-centric security at 4 or 5 Bytugs now over the last few years, and I thought for 2021 I'd try and take a different approach. Comforte has been around for around 28 years, and for most of that time we have been predominant in supporting the tandem infrastructure, the HPE non-stop infrastructure. We've done that through a variety of different ways, but one of the cornerstones has been security. And for most of that time, we provided that security through encryption, which was the best that was available at the time. We protected messages through for predominantly banks and retail organizations through ATM point of sale networks, and we protected the messages from the endpoint to the center. We protected data at rest at the center, and we protected the return messages, the authorizations or whatever, back to the ATM or point of sale terminal using encryption. It worked very well. About 5 or 6 years ago, though, Comforte started to appreciate that the number of attacks on our clients' data and the sophistication of those attacks were increasing exponentially. And it started to take on a very different, daunting aspect. We started to appreciate that actually so consistent and so determined are these attacks that it's feasibly not possible for a commercial organization to be able to resist these attempts at getting at their data. Now, whether these attempts are by OCGs, for those of you who watched Line of Duty here in the UK, organized crime groups to those not so familiar, or whether it is state-sponsored by nefarious governments around the world, it's not really my position to say. But certainly what we identified was it's going to be unrealistic for banks, retail organizations, and other commercial companies to be able to protect their data from attack. We started to envisage a world where the data is going to be accessed. It is going to be breached. It is going to be stolen, whether by these governments or OCGs, or even by malevolent insiders who are choosing to take the data for financial or other gains. So Comforte started to look at data in a different way. And we started to imagine a world where we can't stop the data being breached. So let's imagine a world in which when the data is breached, it becomes worthless to the perpetrator. The thief, the hacker, it has no intrinsic value. That was the beginning of our secure DPS product suite. And since that time, we have been successful, increasingly successful, with some big successes just during the last month, bringing on board customers who now take their data protection very seriously indeed. The picture here represents, at the bottom, the glass, is the HPE non-stop, the tandem world from which we evolved. Here we see a solid container containing whatever it needs to contain in a clear way. It is analogous to the IT environment in which most of us drew our teeth and grew up. We had clearly defined perimeters. We had clearly defined, this is our territory and this is outside, and we could protect and hold what was in it quite safely and quite successfully. The point is that times have changed, and communication is no longer just between banks and other banks, or banks and Visa and MasterCard and American Express. The proliferation of communication now has taken us way beyond traditional boundaries to the point that traditional boundaries no longer exist. Data is no longer contained only within our organization. It's out there in the cloud, effectively on somebody else's server, somewhere else in the world, outside our sphere of control, outside our responsibility, and yet it's our data that's there. We need to protect that data. We need to ensure that when it is accessed, it is worthless to any unauthorized person. None of the main cloud suppliers, not AWS, not Google, not Dell, not IBM, none of them routinely provide data protection in the cloud. It's something that we have to take our responsibility for. And that's become the mission, the primary mission of Comforte. If we look at the route to data security, we are working with many different organizations, many of them within Bycroft. But what we appreciate is that within Bycroft, there is a whole host of organizations who are at very different stages along the journey to securing data. Some of our clients have embarked upon protecting data on the HPE nonstop. Some of them have embarked upon protecting data across the whole enterprise. Few have sought to protect both environments. So we see this as a journey. We see this as a journey to data-centric security protection. The stairs are wide because there are many organizations who need to make this journey. But even within the organizations, the stairs are wide because there are many different people who need to be involved. It isn't just an IT systems manager. It isn't just a CISO. It's the concern of the CEO. It's the concern of the auditors. It should be actually the concern of anybody within the organization who has responsibility for the profit, ongoing success, ongoing operation of the organization. Comforte is here to assist on this journey at whatever stage an organization is currently. Our experience in data-centric security is now leading the world. But who are we to say that? Comforte is in effect a star in the sky, perhaps brighter, but perhaps not that different to many other suppliers who claim to have the best solution, the best approach, the best strategy. So why believe Comforte? Why take Comforte's view of data-centric security any more than anybody else's? What we've tried to do to differentiate ourselves is to publish and proliferate our approach, our strategy, as widely as possible to impartial, authoritative, knowledgeable organizations who are capable of independently assessing the strength of Comforte's offer. So we're not following blindly a supplier. We're following, hopefully, as navigators have for many centuries, a bright star in the sky, something which gives us confidence that we are moving towards something desirable. Data-centric security protection. In terms of the kind of organizations that we talk to, we have worked with a number of centers of excellence of cryptology around the world. Here in the UK, we work with the University of London Royal Holloway College, and all have passed the Secure DPS product suite as leading the market. We also talk to independent market analysts and advisors, such as Forrester, such as Gartner, and others. Forrester have said that data security and privacy is a driver of resilience, revenue, and growth. Now, what they mean by that is that whatever the organization, whatever its activity, whatever its size, the whole feasibility of that organization on an ongoing basis, its resilience, its revenue, its growth is absolutely dependent upon data security. If the data is lost, if the data is compromised, data is the organization of the 21st century's greatest asset. And without data security, the business is in danger. Gartner go even further. Gartner say that the growth in data generation is rendering current data security methods obsolete. Now, what do they mean by that? If we look at traditional ways that organizations seek to reduce risk, they bring in point solutions. It could be endpoint security. It can be network and gateway defenses. It can be volume level encryption on a certain disk. It can be a whole variety of approaches which seek to protect the organization from attack. But all of these defenses are by their very nature localized. They are point solutions. Between each one of these, there is a gap, a vulnerability, a way for data to be accessed which isn't covered by the point solution. So even with all these defenses in place, it is not possible to prevent breaches. It is not possible to protect the data. Data is a pervasive critical asset that crosses boundaries across the whole organization and, as we've seen, into the cloud. This requires a data-centric security strategy that prioritizes data sets and mitigates evolving business risks. These are Gartner's words, not comforte. So, what are the justifications for data protection? The first and most usually thought is to secure the production data, to permanently reduce risk. This is to protect from attack and to consolidate compliance costs. GDPR and other legislation is now well known and pervasive. That can be a motivation, but increasingly the motivation is to stop from real attacks. We also use security tokenization to de-risk non-production data. So we can take a customer database, an entire live database, pass it through our tokenization engine, throw away the tokenization algorithm, and we have a fully populated test database with all the relationships of the live database. We can use this for system testing. We can use it for data analytics. We can use it for AI, machine learning. Basically, we can unlock the full power of the organization's data without compromising the security of that data. We also use security tokenization to enable cloud adoption across cloud native, software as a service, and hybrid environments. So we remove the risk roadblocks of putting our data wherever and however it is best held. And we can also retrofit security applications to fast accelerate lifting and shifting applications into the cloud, to modernize and simplify. In terms of our approach to all of this, we have a full comforte data security platform, the Secure DPS product suite. It consists of a number of different products pertinent to each stage of the life cycle of discovering and classifying where the sensitive data is, making an inventory of it, determining the protection policy, protecting, and then deploying. At the left-hand side, at the discover and classify, we have two main products that we use. PanFinder in the HPE non-stop environment does exactly what it says on the tin and will locate PANs being held in the clear. Every bank that we talk to says, no need for that in our environment. We know where our PANs are. Every bank in which we have ever deployed PanFinder has located unknown or previously unknown PANs in the clear. We also deploy Secure DPS Discover and Classify, a complementary product to our main Secure DPS Enterprise, which has evolved over the last 3 years and become a full product in the light of the number of customers for whom we tried to deploy secure DPS enterprise protection, only for the customer to admit that they don't actually know where their data is. So secure DPS and discover and classify uses a combination of line sniffing and spider web type crawler technology to locate personally identifiable information wherever and however it is held in the enterprise. This covers structured and unstructured data, and it covers known and unknown locations. In a recent bank implementation, the deployment of secure DPS discover and classify, for example, discovered a full customer database located in the garage at home of one of the middle ranking IT managers within the organization. At first, we thought we'd discovered a fraud, but no, this was a very well-intentioned attempt by this individual to put in place a complete customer database backup in case anything ever happened at the bank. Well-intentioned, but clearly not well thought of, not secure, and not looked on very positively by the individual's management. Basically, secure DPS discover and classify locates where the personally identifiable information is held and pulls it all into a virtual repository, which then allows us to specify exactly where the data is that needs protecting. We then work with the customer to determine the policy of protection, where, how, and when can this data be accessed by which individuals, and then we fully deploy the secure DPS enterprise into the tokenization environment. And all this is aided and augmented by Secure DPS Connect, which allows us to fast track a lot of the personally identifiable information formats into the cloud through standard commercially off-the-shelf software interfaces, formats, etc. It is a comprehensive suite, and as I said, we are very successful now with this approach and this philosophy. But what does it all mean? As I said, I've talked about data security at several SIGs, BITUGs over the last few years. And people have come to us afterwards and we talk about this, and we are moving forward with some clients. But it has to be said that we have not reached the point where every single HPE nonstop user is deploying data security. So there is still work to be done. 3 weeks ago, under conditions of anonymity, I was able to meet online a very interesting man. For several years, he'd been an armed bank robber. Quite successful, but as he explained, there were some key risks. Always the need to keep a low profile. And for this to be successful, you have to rely on others. Others who are by their very nature prone to go down to the pub and boast to all their friends that they've just got their share, £300,000 or whatever, of the last successful hit. Quite dangerous. Always the possibility of mistakes. Again, as he said, if the police make a mistake, they were back at their desk the next morning. If we made a mistake, we went away for 5 years. The odds were somewhat stacked against the guy. After 2 stretches inside, he turned his hand to drug dealing. He was still successful, very successful in fact, but there are still some key risks. There is a danger of inviting people into your own home. Any customer could be the police, or they could be being followed by the police, or they could be an informer now or later. And the volume of transactions, in order to increase the success of the business, increased also the risk of arrest. So not ideal. Through an associate, he was invited to the dark web. Access fees in excess of $100,000, but hey what, he could afford it. But the world of the dark web was beyond his initial wildest dreams. And I have to say, I received an education in these conversations with him. There are job boards. There are targets specified to be breached for success fees or joint reward. There are groups seeking specific contacts, seeking specific access information to specific systems of specific institutions. And on the other side, there are a host of individuals who will provide those contacts, will provide that access information. Some people supplying information to the dark web during the evening actually work for the organization during the day and run parallel lives. An eye-opener. There are also groups seeking labor, seeking mules, seeking multiple resources so they can make a parallel attack at the same time. There are training courses. There are mentoring schemes. There are working groups where people get together to proliferate the knowledge that exists. They have daily Zoom calls in the same way as we may have a daily Teams or Zoom or GoToMeeting call. They too have daily calls to discuss what's gone well, what's gone badly, what are today's targets, what's happening, etc. There are networking groups. There are conferences. What's clear is that the fraudsters exist in a complex, highly sophisticated way across a range of networks. To put it mildly, his eyes were opened. So far, he has undertaken 2 assignments. The first was part physical, part online, and netted £750,000. The second, in January of this year, was a bank attack which netted £1.2 million in 4 hours. As he said, he's set up for life. It's a new approach. It's low risk, it's low volume. The criminal profile is tiny. Basically, he worked 4 hours in January, and he now doesn't have to work for at least a couple of years, maybe longer. So the chances of the police being in the right place at the right time to connect with exactly what he's doing is close to zero. At the moment, he's undertaken 0 criminal activity since January because he hasn't needed to. It's a whole new world. As he said, you may see it, he said, as a specific piece of kit. He hadn't heard of the HPE nonstop, but you may see it as an HPE nonstop. But from where I sit, it's just another data location with potential for profit. That should frighten anybody who works in an HP nonstop environment of a bank. With Comforte, we ensure that the stolen, hacked, lost, or compromised data is worthless to the perpetrator. Basically, the profit is not there. If this doesn't scare you or cause you concern, then perhaps the 4% of turnover GDPR fine directly as a result of that breach should. And here we see some examples. Spain has the joy of being the country with the most GDPR violations. Italy, the EU country with the largest sum of total fines. The UK, the country with the highest individual fines. France, with the highest finalized individual fines, and so on and so forth. With Comforte, secure DPS, we ensure that any breach or data compromise is no longer a notifiable event to the GDPR authorities. So, talk to Comforte now. Let's have a chat. Let's explore the protection of your HPE nonstop. Let's examine the risks, rewards. Let's get others involved. Let's deploy a proof of concept. Let's build a business case, and let's protect your environment. Of course, you don't have to come with us. You don't have to come on board and relate to the seriousness of this challenge. But if you are, please come with us. We'll be going up in the lift, in the elevator. to come along the journey to data-centric security protection. But the stairs are there. You are free to leave, no pressure. If this raises any thoughts, if you have a desire to protect your environment, then please let's talk it over. Join organizations such as Visa, who have completely adopted secure DPS to protect their whole enterprise. Toronto Dominion Bank, Macy's, Assurant, Shell, Discover, Gallagher Bassett, and more. Here in Europe, people like Nets, Mercury, Bankart, and others. Thank you very much for your attention. Any questions? Please feel free to unmute if you have any questions.
John, Peter speaking. Just one question. Just a second. I will allow my camera. One question, please. Those customers who are listed here, are they using only your exact solution by comforte, or this is in cooperation with some other solution, for example, like voltage? Is this independent on this, or this is let's say combined solution, what they are using?
These are purely comforte.
Thank you.
And nice to hear from you, Peter. How are you? Good.
Quiet, good. Sorry, I was mute. John, you know that we are planning to use your solution, or at least that intercept library, with voltage. So yeah,
yes.
Yeah, this was the background of my question.
Yeah, no, I understood the background, Peter, and I think you have historical use with voltage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's dare I say, it's a classic example of if I was going there, I might not start from here.
John, hi, this is Yogesh.
Hi, Yogesh. Good morning.
Good morning. Question. If an organization is interested in using the product, how long would it take to install enterprise-wide?
It's a classic, how long is a piece of string, Yogesh? We are working at the moment with one current Bytug bank, and the implementation has taken 5 weeks. We have other examples. Mercury processing, for example, took just under a month. So it's a question of the commitment from the organization and the approach to the deployment. We don't generally deploy in a big bang fashion. You can deploy tokenization in stages. So the system is capable of recommending what's been tokenized and what hasn't. And so the two can run in parallel for a period of time. But in all my experience of implementing across different companies, this is one of the smoothest, simplest implementations I've ever seen. In your organization, I wouldn't like to name a figure, but certainly let's talk.
I'm only sort of asking in terms of based on all other companies, organizations that you've implemented, so we know what we're looking at.
Let's talk offline. People like Helmut are on this call. We could talk together, and I would value Helmut's word far greater than mine in this regard.
Thank you.